Somebody brought this PC along for me to fix. It's having intermittent issues with drive C, but it has a really strange configuration. So I thought I'd bring you along while I fix it. Have a look at this. Hi, and welcome to this video, and welcome back to my office. As I was saying, I've got this machine. It's getting intermittent issues when it's powering up, and it's saying it needs to fix drive C. Once the system boots, it seems to be okay. You're using it for a little while, and then it'll pop up a message and saying drive C needs to be scanned. You scan it. It says it needs to repair it. You hit repair. The machine boots up, comes up through check disk and disk partition and does its own checks, repairs anything it needs to, and comes back up as Windows 10 systems do. But this is going around and around in a circle. So it's been brought to me to fix that. If you go through the logs on the PC, you find that there are a lot of errors on drive C, well actually specifically on drive 0. But if we look at the actual configuration of this machine, you'll notice that there's two drives in the system, but they're not quite right. Drive 0 has been partitioned with almost the entire drive being the actual C drive, and it has a recovery partition on the back, but what's absent is the actual boot partition, which happens to be on disk 1. This is totally wrong. It shouldn't be like that. It should look more like this. This is a single drive system, and you can see that the boot partition and the C drive are both occupying the same drive. This is normal. There's also a second issue on this one. You'll notice from the configuration is that only half of the second drive is allocated, and that's because when the drive was installed on the system, it was installed as an MBR, or master boot record, not as a GUPIT. So it's only addressable as a 2 terabyte drive, and so therefore you can't assign the second half of the drive. So I'm going to fix those two things, and I'm going to fix it first of all by adding in a solid state drive as drive 0. Now the problem I've got here is that if I'm going to use the restore or the image creation tool, which is actually a Windows 7 tool, and use that to do a backup of the C drive and then restore it, it actually won't let me do that to a 1 terabyte drive because it's too big. So let's look at how we take the first step to fixing that. Yes, unfortunately it is true that some of the video of this repair procedure was lost. But I'm going to do a recreation for you, and I hope that's all right. Yes, I apologise for the fact that the video got lost, so I'm going to try and recreate it. Bearing in mind this is a much larger system that I'm about to do a demonstration on. Okay, so what I was trying to iterate before was, because disk 0 in this configuration takes up almost the entire drive for the C volume, you can do a backup of that using the Windows 7 system backup and restore tool. But when you try to restore it to a 1 terabyte drive, it won't do that because it says that the partition is too big for a 1 terabyte drive. Because there isn't enough room for the boot partition. Because when you do a backup, it actually backs up the system boot from the second drive, or disk 1, and tries to add it in. So when it puts the two together, it can't actually put that back onto a 1 terabyte drive. Okay, step 1 of our procedure is we have to shrink this drive, well in this case it's this drive, the C volume, which is 999.43 gigabytes. I'm going to shrink that down to about 300 gigabytes. So we would do that like this in a real demonstration. You right click on the volume, and you select shrink volume. It will do an analysis of that drive and make a recommendation about the minimum size that you can shrink it to, or really the maximum size you can shrink it to. We had plenty of choice in this case. I chose 300 gigabytes to do that. Okay, I'm not going to do that on this volume, obviously. Now that would have made this drive small enough that when it was combined in the backup with the system volume and the system reserved recovery volume, that it would then be significantly less than 1 terabyte. In that case, it would be about 302 gigabytes. So how did we do that? We went to Control Panel, System and Security, and Backup and Restore Windows 7. We choose Create a Volume or Create a System Image, and that will analyze our system for all the available volumes to do that image to. So we'll pick one that's got plenty of room just for this demonstration. Hit Next, and you can see by default it chooses the EFI system partition, which would be this one here, the C system drive, which is this one here, and the Windows Recovery Environment System, which is this drive here. Those three are mandatory and have to be part of a system backup. So once you choose those, it'll show you the volume you've chosen to do the backup to, and it will back up those 3 volumes. Okay, so it would be all this and this, and of course this would now be 300 gigabytes because we shrank it first. So when we chose to then do a restore, we would be able to restore it to a 1 terabyte drive. It's another day now. It's time to put the hard drive into this machine and get it set up to do a restore. So see if you can see that. Should be okay. So we've got 2 drives in this system currently. We've got the 1 terabyte hard drive here, which is your disk drive 0, and you've got a 4 terabyte drive here, which has actually got the boot partition on it, and a drive D titled New Volume. So what I'm going to do is disconnect both drives so that nothing interferes with the restore, and then I'm going to be inserting this, which is a brand new 1 terabyte solid state Evo 860 drive. And I'm going to be putting that in the same position as that. So just grab my anti-static strap and we'll make a start. Okay, so it's important you do have your power cable plugged in so that you're getting a good ground. Just to be sure. Right, there we go. Now, of course, I'm going to be booting this system up, and there's no way to do a screen scrape. So this is a 2 terabyte solid state drive that I added to the system, and that's through an external port here that I added with power. And I've put that in so that I could do the backup to it. So that contains the system image that I did of the original hard disk in the system. And so that's got to be in there so that I can restore to the 1 terabyte drive. Turn the screen on, and here we go. To 64-bit. And I'm going to select here repair your computer rather than install. So now I go into troubleshooting. I'm going to do a system image recovery. we don't need to exclude any drives because I think there's only one. There's the 1 terabyte, which is the new one, and the flash drive there, which is the boot drive that I put in, and the other drive is already excluded because that's the 2 terabyte, which has the disk image on it. We don't need any drivers, and so we're just going to kick that off. Okay, well, while this is going on, I'd just point out that the last few clips with the boot process and also this restoration sped up the clip significantly so that it takes less time, because otherwise it's like watching paint dry. Okay, well, it's done its restore. We'll just bring it back up. It'll be significantly faster. Of course, now it's done. There you go. So that's it after the restore. Not much to see actually. Back to normal. So at this point in time, we now have a disk 0 that has a system reserve section, a main system drive containing the C drive files, and we have the system reserved recovery partition at the back end of the drive. On the disk 1 partition, we have the old system reserve, which used to be the boot drive, the new volume, which seems to be the copy of the system drive, or at least a system drive at some point. Lastly, we have this unaddressable area at the back of this drive, which can't be formatted or turned into a logical partition because the disk 1 as a whole has only been formatted as a master boot record and not as a GUID. Okay, now that my 2 terabyte drive is no longer required to hold the system image backup, I can remove that data off the drive and I can use it to back up this partition here. So I'll just copy the files from this partition to my spare drive. In the interest of saving time, let's say I've done that. I've taken those files and I backed them up to the external SSD. I've reformatted disk 1 as a GUPA drive. All 4 terabytes are addressable, and I've installed a new volume on that drive, and now I've just copied the data back from the external drive onto that new volume. So all in all, we're done. Oh, well, I can hear people screaming at the display that what's an MBR, what's a GUID? Well, I could tell you that an MBR is a master boot record for a PC drive. Came out in 1983 as part of MSPC DOS 2. It's a 16-bit architecture for the 8086 CPU, and that uses 512 bytes to address a maximum of 2 terabytes. I could tell you that, but I might not. Let me put it a simple way. An MBR, or a master boot record, and a GUID, or a global unique identifier, are basically the same thing. They're just different architectures and different ages. As I said, the MBR is quite old. It's 1983 sort of vintage, whereas the GUID's a lot newer and based on newer technology, more for 64-bit and 32-bit CPUs that are out now. So what are they? Well, basically what they are is a method of knowing where things are on a drive. So they're basically an index. So like in a book, you go to the index at the front, you look up what you want, and then you flip through the pages until you find that location that's been identified by the index. That's all they are. And the newer version, a GUID, can just address a larger drive. The important thing here is that you can convert an MBR to a GUID and back again. That is possible. There is a disk part tool that's provided with the Windows operating system that allows you to do that at a command line level is the best way to do it. I didn't use that in this particular instance because of the way that drive had been structured. It had a system disk on the front of it. It had what looked like the remnants of a C drive. So I just decided to take that data off, do a clean initialization of the drive, reformat it, and then put just the data structure back and give the customer a fresh start. Then they could erase that if they wanted, because it had no relevance to the operating system. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope you got something out of it. In the meantime, you all look after each other, take care of one another, and be safe. And we'll see you on the next episode of Tips and Tricks. Bye for now.